Hello, everybody. I hope somebody's watching. Can't see if a lot of people is online or not. I don't know who's joined yet, but you can write in the chat. We can test it here. Hello. If anybody's watching. All right. I want to thank everybody for coming to Funk Camp this year. It was awesome to have everybody there. And today we will have the lecture and Q&A with OG Skeeter Rabbit, and we'll have some other guests in the live. So I want you all to welcome OG Skeeter Rabbit. You can jump in.
Thanks a lot, Rob. First of all, I want to tell everybody I'm very sorry I wasn't able to make it to the Funk Camp this year. You know, so it was a 20th year anniversary. Rob One started it back in 2005, and Greg Campbellock Jr. and myself were the first ones to come to Sweden to actually do that Funk Camp with Rob One. And I wish I'd have been there to close it out because Rob tells me this is going to be the last year that he did it. And I promised him I'd be there to close it out, but I wasn't able to. I want to thank everybody down through the years for getting down with the Funk Camp because it's one of the realest things around the world. I'm going to bring up some of the other people that we got on our main panel, but there's openings. If anybody wants to pop in here, Rob want to send you the link to it, and you can pop in and we'll bring you up with us. But everyone else on YouTube, I want to welcome you and thank you for coming in. Here we go. We got number one. Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Dave Rio. I help organizing Funk Camp and the Love Smoke. Yes.
All righty. We got the next one that's coming up on the panel.
Hello. My name is Jörgen Funky Peddler. I have been locking since 2008 and teaching since 2006. So I teach at Folkhögskola and had Rob, Skeet as teachers, and I'm glad to be with you.
All right, we're going to bring up, I'm the old timer here, but we're going to bring up another old timer. I've been around this guy for 20 years now. We're going to bring up, we call him the Funky Asparagus. We're going to bring him up on the stage right now.
Hello, everyone. Manny or Funky Asparagus. Been locking many years. Glad to be here.
Well, the reason that I wanted to do this online interview is because so many people got so many questions about locking. I mean, I get tons of them online. So I thought that it would be a good idea, since I wasn't at the Funk Camp and Rob brought it up, that I actually answer a lot of the questions that dancers around the world have about locking, some of the most prevalent questions that's going on right now. I wanted to be real sincere with it, tell you what I really thought. I've been around locking since probably the second year since Don Campbell actually instituted the style of dance of Campbell locking. So I've been around it since 1971. One of the first groups in Watts, California. I danced with the Lockers, danced with the Go-Go Brothers, 33 RPM, one of the founding members of the Go-Go Brothers family out of Watts. So I've been around this thing a long time, and it's very dear and sincere to me that it's seriously taken as an art form, something that we can be proud of. So, Rob, you came up with a lot of questions from a lot of the kids. You want to start out with the questions, and we take it from there and see where it leads us?
Yeah, we got a few questions. I could take the first one. Here we go. What are the definitions or your definitions of locking versus Campbell locking in the context? And in what context should we use each Campbell locking so it becomes correct?
Well, I want people to understand that anybody can do a style of dance. If you got a 5-year-old kid and you show them a little bit of locking, or they watch TV and they see it, they can jump up and do the style of dance. That's a style of dance. That's not the art form. That's a style of dance. I've seen 3-year-old, 5-year-old kids, and it's fun to watch them. They jump up, they point, they clap, they hit a move, and they're locking. That's Campbell locking. That's the style. The style of dance is different from the actual art form that a dance can develop into. I can do a style of martial arts. I studied jiu-jitsu, but I don't know anything about taekwondo or any of those martial arts. But I could get up right now, and some call it imitated, but I could do the style. We should not knock people for doing the style of dance. That's the fun part. Anybody could do it, from 8 to 80, blind, crippled, and crazy. Everybody can do Campbell locking. That's what Campbell locking is. That's what Don Campbell created. He created a style of dancing. If you watch the second dance contest on Soul Train, Demeter Joe Freeman says that they're doing the breakdown, they're doing the rubber band, they're doing a bunch of dances. But what style were they doing it in? They were doing it in Campbell locking style. That's what Don created. When I first went to the clubs, it was a style of dance. You could do what you wanted to in that style. There was one move that he did, which was the hesitation of the lock. That was the one move. Everything else was a style. Styles transition into teachable, learnable, foundational art forms. That's locking. That can be taught. People can judge it. You can actually teach steps to it. That's when you have an art form of locking. So the difference between Campbell locking and the style and art form, the dance art form that it became, are different, but they're synonymous together. What style of dance did the lockers use in their act? They used Campbell locking in their act. That's the style of dance that the Go-Go Brothers used, the style of dance that we did when we went to clubs, but we did it in a party style. So the difference is Campbell locking is the style. Locking is the actual art form that you, the teachers, can teach. You don't have to teach a style. You show a style. People can see a style of dance when they go to clubs, parties, when they go to events. They can see a style and go home and do the style immediately. You can't teach a style. When people believe that they're teaching a style, what they're actually doing is showing students how to do the style that they best can do. When you teach an art form, you have a structure. And I know Campbell locking is the freedom of no structure. Locking is what you guys are experts in becoming as students to be able to teach it properly. So to teach locking, you have to understand the history, background, fundamentals, steps. Now, there's no problem when a person dances Campbell locking. If it looks good, it looks good. If it's fun, it's fun. It's no problem. But if you as a teacher said, show me a fundamental step, you would expect the student to understand and show you the fundamental step. As a teacher, as a master, as a proponent of the art form. So I refer to Campbell locking as the style. And I refer to locking as what it became. And if you look at the timeline, that's what it was. It was Campbell locking with Don Campbell doing his style in the parties and in the clubs and all of that. And then as things were added, as cultural things were added, as individual steps were added, it became locking. And Don Campbell himself had to be taught many of those steps to develop choreography for it to become locking. So is there any questions in there concerning what I said as far as the dance goes?
Could you say that locking is a structure of categories? It's like you have names, you have identities to steps. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing the Campbell lock style. Is the style, is that more?
Well,
like unique to what they did on stage, the kind of flavor they had on stage, the style of clothing.
Well, when you talk about stage, see, those are things, the style of clothing and the gestures. That's why we talk about street dance connected to hip hop. Because those things came from the street, they didn't come from the stage. The style of dress has a connection to the streets. The H-Deuce hat has a connection to the streets. The suspenders has a connection to the streets. So it didn't come from the stage. The stage adopted it from the street dance culture. But most of the world adopts it from what they saw on television and the stage. So now we have to go back and identify locking as a street dance, because it has a culture and a street dance background. Anybody can do the style of dance. Anybody. I've seen the style of dance done. Tony Basil and the Lockers did it with the ballet. Anybody can do the style of dance. But to become part of a street dance culture, you have to reference what you do to the streets. And that means have a message in your dance that is more than just the entertainment aspect of the dance.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And that's where I saw locking come from. It came out of the 1960s in Los Angeles, when there was a strong connection to being an advocate through dance. Dance has a voice too. Just like music has a voice and a message, dance has a voice and a message out of the streets. When you eliminate that, you eliminate the essence of representing something. So, and from being 70 years old and seeing it from almost day one, before it existed, that's where I see the difference in why it's real. If you take popping, they now can go into gliding, into ticking. They can go into boogaloo. They can identify how it became an art form. And my basic knowledge of it started with robotics in dance. You look at the b-boy structure. You can go into the six step. You can go into windmills. You can go into all of those things that made it an art form. Now, can I fake? And you've probably seen, I've seen a lot of people fake doing breaking. We saw it in the Olympics, didn't we, really? The b-boy culture wasn't represented. The entertainment of breaking was represented. Locking is the one that people get confused with it having any type of structure that allowed it to evolve. So it allows everyone to start their structure at their style. And I don't have a problem with everyone having their individual style, but you're not adept to the culture unless you can teach the culture too. So am I kind of plain and clear with that? Campbell locking is a style of dance. I can do a bunch of different things, and somebody can call it locking. You can call what Michael Jackson did locking. All he has to do is stop and point. Stop and freeze in one lock move. You can call what James Brown did locking. And all of those are, Michael Jackson was influenced by locking. James Brown influenced locking. So locking is a style. Don Campbell created a style. When we first went to the clubs and as Don Campbell first pointed at somebody, he was creating a style of being able to point. Because pointing means something before Don Campbell pointed. In the streets, when you address somebody, people start calling it the up lock and the muscle man. They just start putting name. But when you address somebody, you address them like this, with your hands open, showing love. Not showing that you're hiding something. So all of those became natural in a style of dance in that era and that time. So when someone does this, they're doing what they've been told is a muscle man. When someone hits you and they got that flair in it, they're talking to you. They're saying, come to me, brother. I'm cool. I ain't got my hand in my pocket. I ain't got no weapon. They're talking to you. And that's what I saw coming out of the 1960s and the 70s with locking. When someone throws up that fist, they was talking to me. So when you teach that, not that someone can't go out and do whatever they want to do with their style, and it looks good, and you acknowledge that you're dancing. But when you're able to look at it and say that person understands the culture of the street dance that they're doing, then you are allowing somebody to have a way to pass this thing on. 10, 15, 20 years from now, when someone says, this is what influenced it, this is how it developed. Otherwise, you have a fad, and it's going to be gone. It's gone. All right, we'll get to the next question. One other thing that I want to go, and it always transitions me in these talks into things, that coming out of the 1960s and the 1970s, when you had too much of a message about what was taking place and you were a dance advocate or a musical advocate, people had a tendency to classify you as being either negative or adversarial. They had a tendency to classify you that way. But when you realize what was taking place was that it says the revolution will not be televised. The message will not be televised. That meant that the streets had to tell the message. And when I interviewed Al Bell, who anybody there know who Al Bell is? You've got Manny. You probably heard me tell the story a bunch of times. Yeah, Al Bell is the leader, the owner of Stax Records. He's the one that actually produced Watt Stax, the concert, and we were dancing Watt's Writers Workshop at the time. I says, Al, why do you have Greg and Fluky doing a handshake on your videos and on your CD covers? Why you have them doing a handshake? He says, Skeet, he said, because you guys were the manifestation of the spoken word. That means we were dancing for the message of the day. And when you're a street dancer, you're dancing for the message of the day. Now, you'll find it ironic because the message of the day is very similar to the message that we're finding out even of yesterday. We're dealing with the same issues in the world. So you are the descendants of that message. And I don't care what color you are, where you're from, what language you speak, you're descendants of that message. So when you dance that message with all of your passion and all of your heart, you're representing the streets. And when you can represent and I can turn to a student, I can say, show me an original Scooby-Doo. And they can do it. I say, show me how you like to do it. And then they can do it. Now they are diverse in the culture and the dance. When I say, show me a original foundational Scooby-Doo, and they do some form of this the way they want to do it. And I say, no, show me a foundation. Well, this is the way I do it. Then they only know how to do a style of dance. All right, let's get on. Where you got another question for me, Rob? Or anybody got a question or any follow-up on that stuff?
So we can take the ones I have written here.
Mm-hmm.
Next one was, how far can a style and character go until it's no longer locking or camber locking? Can an extreme loose, flowy way of moving still be fundamentally correct?
In the concept of camber locking, there's no such thing as right and wrong. It's just a style. If we were putting a group together, and the Lockers did the same thing. If you wanted to dance with the Go-Go Brothers, you had to do it certain steps a certain way, so you blended with the group. If you were dancing with Greg, Fluky, and Shabadoo as the trio, You had to know to do steps a certain way to be accepted. If you wanted to come to Mavericks Flats or the Summit and get down on the front line with the top lockers, you had to know how to get down with the call outs and the steps that they were doing on the front line. So there is a proper way, and always been a proper way. Don Campbell didn't just put anybody in his group. Well, he didn't put the group together anyway. It was a whole nother thing to put the group together. But Don wouldn't have been accepted. Because if you couldn't do certain things the way that it was supposed to be done, or the way that we saw it as being done, we called some people slop lockers. That didn't mean they didn't dance. That didn't mean they didn't have a great time when they went to their parties and they got down. That didn't mean when they went to their house or in their neighborhood, people didn't like what they did. But they wasn't doing it correct enough to be accepted at that top level. So yes, there's a correct way to do it in the foundational concept of locking. There's a correct way. There's a correct way to hit a lock. There's a correct way to roll your wrist. There's a correct way in the concept of locking. And the concept of doing the style of dance, anybody could do it. Somebody 5 years old can roll their wrist and point, and what would you say they were doing? If you saw a kid do that, what would you say style of dance he was doing? Locking? Would you say locking? Would you say Campbell locking? You see what I'm saying? People don't want it to be an art form and a style of dance. People want their style of dance to be the art form. And that's what left it open all of these years. If you win a contest, then your style of dance becomes the art form. Because that's what you teach. That's what everyone wants to do. They want to win. But that's not necessarily representing street dance. That's not representing, and you have it in every genre of street dance. Hip hop is saying the same thing. The b-boy culture is saying the same thing. Popping is saying the same thing. Whacking in the gay community is saying the same thing. That you could do the dance, but you're not representing the culture. And a real teacher understands and has studied both. If I went to a martial arts event, I walked into a dojo or martial arts event, and I imitated my style of doing a martial art. Do you think that the sensei in there would not know I don't know the foundation of his art? He would know. And we're doing the same thing to street dance. And people say, well, dance is free. It is. The styles of dancers are free. I never took a lesson in my life to learn how to do the breakdown. But when you start professing that you are a street dancer, that you are part of the history of hip hop, when you start saying that you're from the history of the funk and soul era, then you have to know where that cultural history comes from so that you can exhibit it from your heart. You can represent it from your heart. And I find people that know how to talk to me with locking, that understand that handshakes and locking came from handshakes on the street, came from dapping each other up. Then they do the handshake with the dap, with the unity. They don't do it performing it, they do it living it. But a lot of people don't understand that, because locking is the one thing, Campbell locking is the one thing that you can see today, do tomorrow, and teach it, say you're teaching it the next day. Because you don't teach it all, you just have to show it. So I hope I answered your question, Rob. Is there
I have a follow-up question. I have a follow-up question of my own. not going after the questions I got here.
All right.
I wanted to ask you what you think the impact that Greg had on the locking community. How like what's the part of his let's say it like this.
Wow.
I see it, or I heard it from many, that he is the one that kind of put together the curriculum for locking from everything that was happening around and how everybody was doing the moves and stuff. But he was one of the main people to write it down and keep it kind of the way locking was shown and is shown today as locking and not timbre locking, but like the performance style or the technical style and stuff like this. What do you think his impact was?
Let me tell you this. And I was looking for a video where Greg actually told it himself. Greg was first of all, let me tell you this. He was a remarkable character. His personality, his creativity was remarkable. Rest in peace, Greg. I knew Greg from about the time I was about 16, 17 years old. What people don't realize about Greg is Greg went between the different scenes in locking. So he had a diverse concept of where everything was coming from and passing it on. Much like you hear Boogaloo Sam talk about going up north, where they were doing the Boogaloo and then coming down south, where you had locking and had gone into pop locking. Greg transitioned. He hung out, he came from Compton High School. Compton, if anyone knows, is right next to Watts. He hung out with the Go-Go and Yo-Yo Brothers family there. He was part of Watts Writers Workshop when we came and got him to go to Watts Writers Workshop. Greg and Scooby, especially Greg first, was young enough to go to the high school and college dance. So he hung out going to high school and college dances, but yet he could go to the over the 18 clubs, Mavericks Flats and the Summit. He looked old enough to where, with a little bit of fake ID, he could get into over 21 clubs, where Don Campbell and Fred Berry was over 21. So Greg was going back and forth between them. I had an opportunity to do that. I was a little younger, but I was able to do that also. So Greg knew it all. Greg knew where the unison steps were coming from out of Compton and Watts. We had put groups together in choreography in Watts Writers Workshops. He took that choreography and taught the Lockers choreography. I have a video with Tony Basil where she tells that. If we had more time, I would actually go into actually showing you some of those videos, and we can at any particular time that we want to do that stuff and just go back into those videos. He taught the Lockers some of the choreography out of Watts Writers Workshop. They had no choreography and no performance then. There was no act. It was only Campbell locking. The steps were being done in the clubs as Go-Go Brothers, Yo-Yo Brothers, Greg and Scooby, who were living together, would call out steps, and the whole club would do these steps. So Greg was that transition. Very intricate part of how this whole thing developed. Very intricate part. I spent time in clubs teaching Don Campbell how to do the Skeeter Rabbit. I taught Don Campbell how to spin a hat. And that's not to take credit for anything, but there were a lot of things, the handshakes and everything. This all came together. Greg was very, very, very instrumental in that. The division came in between Campbell locking and locking. Don Campbell thought because Greg had put a structure together where he had charted things, he had wrote things down, where he understood how steps went. He started to try to put timing in it from Watts Writers Workshop. We didn't know how to count 5, 6, 7, 8 in those days. We did, okay, we're gonna do 6 Scooby-Doos to a quickie. That's how we choreographed. We could call it out inside of a club and actually do it. Greg knew how to do that. Don didn't know how to do that. Don would come over into the nightclub when we were doing it and get next to us and say, well, show me how to do that. Why you do this again? That's what Don was asking. So by Greg teaching this, it caused an animosity because Don created the style. And just like all egos, people want credit. So when Greg started teaching the structure, Don started saying that there was no structure. When Don started saying it's total freedom, people start saying, well, it's not total freedom if you're doing everything that comes about in it. The problem with it is that you needed both. Both are part of the history of locking, of Campbell locking to locking. Both are what made it an art form eventually. So naturally, just like it's in real life, people gravitated towards red and blue, locking, Campbell locking, Greg, Don, and it caused a problem. And it separated. But rest in peace, Greg. Without Greg, the lockers wouldn't have had that transition. Well, it would have. They saw it. Certain people saw it, but Greg was the one that took the streets to the dance style. And like I said, there's a video with Tony and other people saying, yeah, Greg was very, very instrumental. But by Greg having even the name Campbell Lock Jr., and at first, let me say this, it was not Campbell Lock Jr., it was Campbell Jr. And at first, it was not Don Campbell Lock. It was Don Campbell. As it became popular and people needed to put a brand on it, Don did not want them to forget that he created that actual lock, that Campbell Lock, so he put his name on it, Campbell Lock. And Greg followed right along with it and became Campbell Lock Jr. Just the names itself caused animosity. And the business end of locking caused it because other people from the outside came in and fed off of dividing Greg and Don. But we were all actually brothers. When I went to Mavericks Flat, because Don was still young enough to come down to the over 18 clubs, and all the girls liked him. He was 22. So it was different scenes. But there was no such thing as the Orange County scene at that time. No such thing. No such thing as OC style or Valley style. There was no such thing. Everything was coming out of the inner city of LA, Watson, Compton. Anything else, Rob? What's the next one you got on the list?
The next question
as
was...
As long as that one makes sense. Anybody got anything from that one?
Oh, I haven't checked everything. I got some other questions there. But
hit me up, Rob.
we'll take this one. What do you think is lacking in the scene today, dance-wise? Can the dance evolve too much so it's no longer fundamentally correct?
I think it's gone a little far outside the parameters of what is correct and what's not correct. What's needed are educated teachers and teachers that understand the difference in the timeline and diversity of how the dance actually evolved. Some of you can dance the social party style of locking, where there's a show and respond, a present and respond. As you can see, Soul Train did as couples, and that's how Don developed the style of dance. Some of the teachers know how to teach that and can do that. They can allow their classes to respond and show. And they can tell people that they're dancing a style of dance within a respond and show. And they can point out in there where a person now is doing fundamental steps in the respond and show and calling out fundamental steps, and everyone knows fundamental steps. They can make the identification between fundamental locking and Campbell locking. But I think that you're going to always have people when they're doing the dance style being creative. And when that happens, they will come to a point where it may not be camber locking or locking. It definitely will not be locking because locking has a structure. But it can be influenced by camber locking and evolve into something other than that. That's where the concept that people didn't want to recognize, for the same reason that I talk about locking, got confused. They didn't want to recognize the term pop locking. Pop locking was an evolution between Southern California's way of roboting and locking. Why? Because in camber locking, robot was accepted as part of the style. Think about that. Why else would you have a robot like Slim or a robot like me, because I was a locker and a robot, accepted in locking performances? Because robotics was part of the style. Robotics as a dance, not as a mime, not as street entertainment, but as a dance, was part of locking. I could be locking in a club and break out in robot and go back to locking in a club and people called me a locker. Because it was part of the style. Don Campbell himself says people were doing the robot shuffle along with the breakdown and the funky chicken. Put all three of those together and you have a very crude style of locking. So you have all of these blends and mixtures in there. So if you allow a person to just do the style of dance, they're going to come up with all kinds of things. And something will be so much different that it could be called or evolve into another name. Yeah, that can happen. But you can't do it with the art form of locking. Because it's already an art form. There's already correct ways of doing the sneak, Scoobots, Skeeter Rabbits, the Scooby-Doos. There's correct ways of executing and ending a gesture. So you can't come up with a new dance that way. You could come up with it doing a dance style. So I don't have a problem with people doing the dance style and doing it their way. And if it looks different or it comes up with something or someone adds a name to doing camber locking style and say it evolves from camber locking, that's fine. But you can't change an art form. I can't change this to mean something than what it meant in the locking. I think we lost Rob for a second. What did Rob do? Rob must have didn't pay his electric bill. He doesn't have any more internet. They shut him down right in the middle.
He said it. Yeah, he says he had to turn off his camera for a few minutes.
Okay.
I have another question I could pose for you.
Sure.
So it's more of a personal one.
Oh, ask me anything.
It's fine. Yeah.
Ask me anything.
So what do you believe is the most important aspect or element of life to celebrate? And to what extent does locking as an art form celebrate this aspect or element in your personal experience?
Change. Look, when we first started doing this, people thought we were crazy. We're throwing up the fist and all that. They thought we were radicals, man. Moms and dads they thought we were crazy. My mom thought that I was a drug dealer because I was making more money in dance contests than she was on a job. So change. The dancers today have to understand they have a voice. They have a voice in all of this. But when you deny your voice, you deny the opportunity for change. When we first start going to dance contests in the inner city, which is, we talk about inner city, there wasn't a lot of money in their city. So if you went to one of the little local clubs, you got a dance contest, you might win $25. Shoot, that wouldn't buy you shoestrings now, would it? But you might get $50, $25. But we found out that when you went out into the suburbs to the more ritzy dance contests that had money, you could win a $100 dance contest. Well, back in the 1970s, my mom was making $250 a week on a job. So if I won a couple of dance contests, I was in it. So naturally, we tried to run out to some of the dance contests in the suburbs. But at first, they wouldn't let us in because who we were. We're talking the 1960s. Civil Rights Act wasn't signed in 65. Then the 1960s, 70s, Soul Train was just starting. They wouldn't even let us in. Till they found out that we were popular and we would draw crowds, that other people wanted to see this dance, wanted to become involved. The Lockers had become popular, other groups had been. Now they started letting us in. So now we are now able to make effective change. Now we are part of breaking down segregation and creating integration. Now they're playing Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud in all white clubs. And those kids are dancing to it just as hard as we were. You know why? Because black is not an exterior color, it's an interior color. This just happens to be the exterior, okay? So it's caused integration. It caused me to come to Sweden the first time in 2005. 2005. It caused me to be able to talk to kids around the world that I never would have met. The dance, when people talk about the power of the dance, they thought the power of the dance was how fast you did it, how hard you did it. The power of the dance is in the message that breaks down barriers. That's the power of this dance. The power of this dance went from Soul Train to around the world. It went from the streets, the clubs, like house parties to Soul Train and around the world. So the message is change. If you do this dance for just you, if it becomes a selfish thing, I didn't win this contest, I need to, if it becomes selfish and you take the message out of it, you know what you've actually taken out of the dance? Funk and soul. You've taken funk out of the dance. You've taken soul out of the dance when you do it just for you. When you have that exhilaration, that feeling, and the room gets that feeling, and you are now doing the dance for what it's meant to be, whether that's in a club, in a battle, and when you let go, when you submit to the music, when you climb inside that music, and you start exhibiting it, and that aura falls off of you, that's what came out of the TV shows of Soul Train, through screens, through TV screens, in the people. The dance has a message, and when you take it out, it no longer has a soul. So that's what I teach. You know why? Because that's what I felt back then. And for it to transition over 50 some years still in me, to see the way I'm talking with passion now, that it was very powerful. It meant more to me than just winning that $100 in the dance contest. I left knowing I'd reached dance enlightenment and that I'd touched some people in that place. So teaching your students those things, learn the foundation, learn to pass on the foundation of the art form, and learn that the history of it is not bound by one person or two people or one group. It's bound by a movement. And that so is hip hop. It's bound by a movement. So teach your students that. Teach everyone that. Students be open to that. Because anything you can become good at by just seeing it, is not worth saying that it has a depth of a soul. Hey, I sometimes I get to going and it gets me passionately involved in it. But well, what else, Rob? What else? Anybody else got anything? Rob, you got another one for me?
Jürgen, did you answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, here's a question that David wrote. When was the Skeeter Rabbit created and what was the inspiration behind it, time and place?
1971, 72. The streets in Los Angeles. Now, I come out of South Central Los Angeles, and it's about 5 miles south of Compton and Watts, where I went to high school. So I had to go down and catch the bus every day, straight down what was called Central Avenue, out of South Central into Watts. Saturday mornings, street was full. Kids were playing. They were playing street games, hopscotch. They were doing double dutch. And music was always playing, much like you see in the scenes in New York on the streets. LA was much the same way. The radio was going all the time. There was black radio stations, KGFJ. They was shouting out slogans, the whole bit. So I had this around me every day. And me and the Go-Go brothers, Yo-Yo brothers, we would get together in what was called the Senior Square at Verbum Day in Watts. And we would do practice little steps and stuff. As I was coming out of my house, I started noticing the hopscotch. And it looked as though the girls was doing it in rhythm with the music that was playing on the boxes and radios. I watched the double dutch, and they were doing it. It just so happened that night, I was a big fan of the Nicholas brothers, and they used to always end some of their tap dance shuffles with a shuffle out front. I happened to go to Verbum Day, and we were doing some steps, there was kickball chain steps before Scooby actually introduced them into the actual Scooby-Doo, the kickball chain stuff. And I started shuffling out front. Well, I shuffled all around the place, and then I shuffled and kick stopped. And everybody started laughing and joking and whatever. And I kept doing it, and I would go to clubs. When I went to the Citadel that weekend, and I was on the side. Fred Berry was there, Rerun was there, Greg was there, and Don Campbell was there. Locking looked nothing like you saw the Lockers do it, me do it, or anybody after it evolved in 1975. Don would slap the floor, do a knee drop, he'd scream, he'd turn his hat backwards. Nothing like the flow and rhythm that you see Locking now. And someone says, "Hey, Ski, do that stuff you be doing, do that jump around thing." Much like they told Don Campbell to do the lock. So I started shuffling. I started shuffling all over the floor, and then I kick and stop. And Fred Berry started laughing. Penguin started laughing. He said, "Man, Skeeter, you look like a rabbit." Because I wasn't Skeeter Rabbit until that point right there. He said, "You look like a rabbit. You're hopping around doing that Skeeter Rabbit stuff." That was it. That's how I became Skeeter Rabbit. And that's how the dance actually got its name. And that's where it came from. And myself and the Go-Go brothers, Tony, Buddy, Kevin Yo-Yo, Peekaboo Frankie, all of us, that became synonymous inside of the parties and at the clubs as we start, as you call it out, Skeeter Rabbit, and everybody started doing it. Freeze! Everybody started doing it. And that's how the Skeeter Rabbit got going. And that's how my name got to be Skeeter Rabbit instead of just plain Skeeter. And I think a lot of steps, a lot of things develop that way. Don Campbell said they start saying, "Do that lock thing." Well, Don would freeze up after doing the robot shuffle, and it became the lock. It became part of the style of the way he did his stuff. Fluky was awesome. Fluky Luke would do the Leo lock, where he would put his arms here, the butterfly like you saw done, the Leo lock, but he would do it in a locking style. Demita Joe, Pat Davis, they would do the butterfly their way. Fluky did it in a locking style. It became called the Leo lock. The sneak. See, Greg and Scooby lived together. So there were some things that they did an awful lot alike too when they were at Watch Writers Workshop with the Go-Go and Yo-Yo brothers. And let me mention the Tuda Wooda sisters. Let's not forget the Tuda Wooda sisters. They were part of all of that creation. Out of Inglewood, there was the Ghetto Dancers, who was the first Captain Crunch and the Funky Bunch. Then there were local groups that were springing up as shows were being done in high schools and grammar schools. This is actually before the Lockers actually got started, and Greg took all of this to Tony Basil, who then put the Lockers together. And Greg taught the Lockers a lot of the steps and routines. Some of them were already doing it. Fluky was doing it in the clubs with us. Shabadoo actually had to be taught from out of Orange County. When we finally got into Orange County, Greg and Tony and myself brought Shabadoo into the inner city and actually taught him. But Greg and Scooby lived together. But there were a lot of other dancers. John Dope Wilson, Peekaboo Frankie, Shaboo, Kevin Yo-Yo. There were a lot of dancers. A lot of great F&M. A lot of great dancers. So I hope I didn't go too far off with that question.
Thank you so much. We have the YouTube chat. And the question and Ski more about what's the workshop. Heard about it, but a lot of want to know.
Well, you have to look at we'll go back into the 1960s and the civil rights era and the civil rights movement. The Watts riots was 1965. A Jewish guy by the name of Bug Selig, when a lot of things burnt down in Watts, created Watts Writers Workshop so that the young people in Watts with talent would have somewhere to go and become mentored. The writers began to teach poetry. The poets, like the last poets, which were some of the first ones of rap type poetry, would be there and teach poetry, how to write poetry. Well, the Go-Go and Yo-Yo brothers were becoming popular on the high school scene. They were doing a lot of high school talent shows, rallies, and that sort of thing, doing their whole routine. Actually, they did a thing in the sports arena for 10,000 people at the CIFs. They did a 20-minute show. Arnetta Johnson, Nettabug, had a relative who was a curator at Watts Writers Workshop. They asked us to come there and to put a group together and actually teach and perform with that workshop's traveling troupe. We did in 1971-72. That's where we started putting the routines and the synchronized dancing and the choreography together. We went and we got Greg and Scooby to come down with us at Watts Writers Workshop, and we put a group together. That group was called Creative Generations. And we put routines together, and we traveled up and down the West Coast with Watts Writers Workshop as they taught their poetry and they did things at colleges, universities. And we did an entire show. That was the first of the organized part of it. In 1973, when Tony Go-Go and myself, Buddy Go-Go, we went off to colleges and to the universities in that fall. Greg then, still being a little older than us, was still dancing on the clubs. I was still dancing on the clubs when I came home on the weekends from college. Tony with the Redlegs, he would come back periodically. That's when Greg got with Tony Basil and Don and created the Lockers. So a lot of the things that he had learned at Watts Writers Workshop, that's how he went over and taught it to the Lockers and put an actual show together with the Lockers. When they first went on TV, I received a lot of phone calls. Man, we saw you guys. We saw Watts Writers on. I said, no, that's not us. That's Don and that's Greg and that's when Don had put that group together as the Campbell Lockers. Now let me go back slightly. Don had a group at the same time we had Watts Writers Workshop, but they didn't do any choreography. They did much like the New York Breakers. Everybody stood in the back and kept time until it was their turn to solo. So each one came out and did their Campbell locking style. They were called the Campbell lock dancers. But what happened was their manager, Sonny Craver, got in conflict with them out on the road, and they disbanded, and they came back. So Don Campbell put the second group together as the Campbell Lockers, and then he was talked into moving his name off that group by Tony Basil. So the story goes, by Tony Basil talked him into taking his name off that group, and they took on the generic name of the art form, Lockers and Locking. We were all called Lockers before the Lockers were called Lockers. That's what we were. So the history of this and the timeline of this all plays into how it became what it became. And if I could just unplug this cassette right here, and when I say cassette, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Cassette, everything's streamed now. If I could unplug this cassette and plug it in, and you see this party timeline, house parties, so the 1960s, and you go into how it evolved into a performance from the parties and the clubs, you would see all this development and how it happened. But it's not many people left alive that can go back in their heads and do that. And then some don't want to do that because they've always taught themselves as creators. Anything else?
Yes. Thank you. So the next question is from Faisal to chat. And the question is, do you see a difference in how love to the music and 40 years ago?
You're breaking up. Did anybody catch what he said?
Do you see a difference in how love related to today compared to 50 years ago?
I think people today are not, they're too into winning. They want to win. Everybody wants to be a teacher and a master. Everybody wants to win a battle so that they got the credentials behind themselves. And they don't submit to the music and the culture and become dancers that are exhibiting the message of the music. I see a lot of creativity in the Campbell locking style out there in some of the battles, but I don't see the cultural art form having a message that it once did. So I think it's changed somewhat. I think it's changed. I think everybody is self. People are mad at judges. Everything has turned out to be a self-type thing. It's about me, and not about the culture and the art form and the dance. I think that's how it's changed the most. And I think people get upset when you start talking about the culture, the art form, and the dance, because it takes away from them being able to push the me concept of it. But I am very happy to a certain extent because and it's going to always be this way. Nothing's going to ever be absolute. Anything that you want to develop, to have substance and to be good, is going to take people like you and I to work at it, to push at it. You can't expect everyone to want to be part of the cultural art form. Some people just want to do the style of dancing Campbell lock. And that's great. Don't knock them. Don't discourage them. Don't say, well, you're not, don't do that. Acknowledge that they're keeping the dance style going. Because if they're keeping the dance style going, then there's a place for you to teach the art form within the dance style. So I think that's what's important. I think it's changed an awful lot. But there has to be a history and a culture to it for it to continue as an art form. What did you know, nothing never looks, everything evolves. Everything evolves. But if you go back and look at history, there's a place to understand what a foundation is and an art form is. Why do we watch old movies? Because we get inspiration out of it. I think another thing that's changed with the dance is the music. The music of my era was inspirational too, not just the lyrics, but funk has a heavy drum bass feeling that comes from the tribal background of a culture. Some of the music today does not exhibit where you feel the lyrics in the music. Even in jazz, when you hear that saxophone start to talk to you, just like I'm talking to you, and sometimes it speeds up and it gets really loud, and it gets really powerful, and sometimes it gets nice and smooth. When you hear that saxophone talk to you, and you could climb inside that saxophone with your grooves and your locking. That's another word, grooving. When you can climb in it like that, then you're starting to submit to the music, and the music starts to inspire you. Social conscious music was the music of the 60s and 70s. Today, there must be music that inspires locking. DJs must find that music. Artists must produce that music. Dancers must identify with that music. So how do you know what that music is? You do go back and study the history and find out what was on the one with James Brown. What was that beat? What was that funk? Because James Brown says, funky funk, funk in the air. It's so thick I could almost cut it with a knife. So he not only saw it, he did not only feel it, he could damn near smell it. That's how powerful the music has to be. And that's how powerful you got to be exhibiting on a dance floor. You got to lose yourself in that funk. So I think that's the biggest change, the music. And now the dance is done for self and not a collective movement. Did I get your question there?
Yes,
Gotcha,
absolutely.
Focus. Gotcha.
So the next, if you time, is where can people locking if they go to these any teachings that
Well, I've been around the world teaching. I've seen both teachers that are interested in the cultural art form. Every country basically has some people that are real, and every country has some people that are just interested in trying to claim the fame and the whole bit. And it happened from 1969, 70 when I came in. It's always going to be like that. You have to seek out the people that are real, that have the same ideals that you have, the same concepts of the culture that you have, the same concepts of community that you have, the same concept of message that you have. Now, that's not to say that you don't just go and get your style of dance off at a party or an event. That's great, but you have to find those people. I don't like to name them so much in a public forum because people say, well, you're taking sides, but you're in a forum with an outstanding group. Now that's why I support the Sweden Funk Camp for all of these years, because it was real. It was real about bringing you things, people like me and things like this to the forefront, instead of just teaching you some moves or showing you some moves or showing your students some moves. And I think most countries that I've been to, there's people there that are interested in that. Otherwise, I wouldn't still be around at 70 years old. I think one of the best things you could do to get that feeling, two things I do. I used to dance in the total dark. I put the music on in a dark room. Because I didn't care what I looked like or what it was. And I would exhibit my locking stuff in the total dark. And then I learned before this I learned from very early in the 1960s, my mom used to call me out and make me dance in front of all of her aunts and uncles in the living room. I learned to respond and share. When you're dancing around other people, share with them. Share the move, how you do the move, the quickness, relate to them, talk to them. If you're talking to them, talk to them, work with them. Don't dance against them. Dance for them. When they're doing something that's funky, that should inspire you to get in the groove with them. When you're doing something that's funky, it should inspire the room to get in with you. When you hit a point to the audience, they should feel the electricity leave that fingertip and hit the audience. I think that's when you're actually transitioning the dance and working with the dance and sharing the dance cultural art form. I think that's it. And again, don't let me say that I'm discouraging anyone. I don't care whether you're 3 years old or 5 years old or whatever, from just dancing the style. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you're wrong if you dance the style. I'm saying you're wrong if you can only dance the style, but you tell people you're representing the cultural art form. You're selling it as your style. Your style is the art form. That's when you're wrong. That's when I don't agree. That's when people start talking about appropriation, whether it's cultural or otherwise. Because I couldn't do it. I go here in California and Los Angeles. There's a lot of Hispanic, Latin, Mexican culture. I got a lot of friends. Matter of fact, I got family that's Hispanic, Mexican. I got family that's if you look at my family, there's some all kinds in there. And in my heritage background, I found out I had some Swedish and some Irish in me. So I'm a mutt mixture of my doggone self. But my predominant is African because I'm considered black. So my predominant is African. But when I go to these events, the Latin music's going, and yeah, I get out there and I do the salsa, or what my rendition of the salsa is, the style. And people, they like it. I dance with the different ladies, my wife, and we salsa, right? I would dare go in front of a master and claim I could teach salsa. I dance the style. I don't dance the art form. I wouldn't dare dress up in traditional mariachi or Latin things and go into a dance class and claim that I could judge them doing the salsa. Unless I went and studied. Unless I understood the cultural background. Unless I could exhibit what the move meant. That's only when I would be awarded the opportunity and accepted to be that. Teachers out there around the world today have an obligation to represent these cultural dance art forms in the way that they were meant to be represented. Now, like I say, go dance the style any way you want to. Because I could get up today right now and I could do some taekwondo, but it wouldn't be the real deal. All right, what's next? What you got? We it looks like it's running good, even over the time that I was told we have an hour on the stream. But I don't care as long as you guys got questions. I'll sit there and answer 'em.
Yeah, but I think it's time to round it up soon.
Yeah.
I mean, we could do a live another time. Also, it would be nice to show some clips from like the old funk camps, and you had some stuff also you could show maybe. But we could do another live maybe in a couple of months or something.
Absolutely, we could do a live once a month or once every other couple of months, whatever you guys want. Because like I said, we're getting old. The real people, and there's a few of them that's still out there, that I talk to, that I deal with, that I grew up with. But the real people, there's not a lot that can pass on this to your generation. And now you guys got a generation that's younger than you. You guys are I don't like OG term. I got OG by accident. It wasn't a term I put on myself. And we'll go into those things one of these days on here, how the terminology's been co-opted. But you guys are that generation now. It's what you guys want to pass on that can pass on funk and soul and can make it powerful or can make it just dance moves. So it's up to you guys. As long as you want me to help or talk, as long as I'm valuable, I'll do it. I'll even get up. And I was going to do it today. I can put another camera over there, and I'm not going to go into what I used to do on the dance floor, because you guys see me do some pretty crazy stuff in some videos on the dance floor. I'm not doing that no more. My wife would kick me out the house in a wheelchair if I do that. So, but I'll show you things like how we did wrist rolls. We didn't do this. We didn't do this. And I'm not saying that people can't do that when they do their style of dancing, but I can show you how the wrist roll was originally done. I can show you different things that make things fundamental. And it could be added to the camber locking style or the locking foundation. And you can explain to students what the difference is. And in my classes, I will allow people to just express, to just do the camber locking. Let me see your camber locking style. Let's do lead and respond. They're doing this, respond to them. They're doing this on this side of the room, respond to them. I'll do that. And I'll call out and I'll test, just like they will in martial arts, whether somebody understands the foundational style, what it means, how to do it. And then go back to doing I'll do the locking style that way. Then go back to doing your camber locking. I think that's the way that you pass on an art form. Because when a person gets their green belt or their orange belt, they're tested for it, aren't they? They have to know a certain amount of stuff, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually, right? And the sensei tests them to understand, to find out if they understand. Well, locking, all we do is show people. Then we can't test them because they tell us we have no criteria on what is excellent and what is mediocre. All dance styles are excellent. All art forms are not excellent. They can become mediocre. So I think you all knowing the difference and passing that on to the students to understand the difference, not to knock them out of doing it either way, passes on what the essence of street dance is. And I'm teaching it in locking and robotics, but in locking, they're teaching the same thing. They're arguing the same message in hip hop. Hip hop as a dance, hip hop as an art, as a fashion, as a lifestyle. Popping is doing the same thing. They're going back and embracing pop lockers, boogaloo, all of that into popping. Where are we in locking? Where are we? That's my question. All right, like you said, Rob, whenever you need me, and we can set up monthly. We could set up the videos. I got videos that I've never shown of dancers and stuff from back there. I'm more than willing to come on. Any of you out there, whether you're on Netflix or here, that have a question for me, don't hesitate to find out my email or how to contact me. I'll answer your question. I'll find the question. I'll find somebody that can answer your question for you. And you know what? Go out there and dance from your heart. When you go out there and get down, dance from your heart, y'all.
Is this watchable afterwards?
Are they what?
Is it watchable on YouTube afterwards?
Yeah.
Can people watch this afterwards?
Yeah, it'll be up on YouTube afterwards. And I also got a copy. Nice. I got a copy that I recorded for you, Rob, so you can always put it in the history banks there in Sweden. So long after I'm out of here, boy, you could show it and let them know that there was an OG that cared about what they do out there, and give them much props. Last thing.
Thank you, brother.
Two things. Last thing. I want to give much respect to Greg Campbell-Lock Jr., rest in peace. Don Campbell, rest in peace. Greg Campbell-Lock Jr., rest in peace. And there's some people that are very dear to me that I must also give RIP to. That's not the famous ones. John Okie Doke Wilson, rest in peace, brother. Go Yo-Yo Brothers family. F&M from the Ghetto Brothers, the Ghetto Dancers family. F&M, one of the great ones, rest in peace. Fred Berry, rest in peace. All those that has come before me that is given to this, rest in peace. And I want to thank my wife for giving me this time to spend with you guys. Arlene, thanks a lot. Peace to you.
Thank you, man.
All right, we out?
Yeah, we're out.
Peace, everybody.
Thank you, Skeet.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, man.